All right, let's get this thing rolling. Like I always say, the first thing, forget about spiritual experiences or states of meditation. Just don't bother with that stuff. Let's start from there. Let's start from where we should start. So no meditation, no concentration, maybe not even relaxation. Simply being present. Naturally, effortlessly, easily. Breathing can flow. The mind can flow. Don't try to arrest your mind. Just like we are not seeking or striving to find some special state. That's kind of one way of arresting the mind. Similarly, don't try to control your mind. Mind made of thoughts and emotions and whatever impressions. Natural free flow of energy. It's a funny thing, isn't it? When all that seeking stops, and we can purposefully stop all seeking, all doing, we naturally, consequentially arrive in this recognition of the natural state. And when that happens, there comes this very deep healing in the body. Sort of like the tissues, the whole body becomes flooded with this healing balm or healing nectar. That's ourselves healing ourselves, healing our bad parts, samsaric parts. Obviously, Buddhas and Mahasiddhas don't feel that because they are all the time, there's no blind spots or cracks like in the minds and bodies of samsaric beings. So Mahasiddhas they don't experience this healing effect because they don't need to. But when we experience it as samsaric beings, by all means, this is ourselves, our true being, the Buddhas who we are, each one of us, healing our confusion, healing our pain, whether physical or psychological. Simple awakeness, this Buddha that each of us is, the potential of each of us. Sometimes different teachers, they talk about this simple technique called like a smiling, a little bit like a Buddha statues. I also teach this simple practice, but at this point, don't bother smiling purposefully. When you have recognition of the natural state, the inner smile comes by itself. And it's not only smiling in the corners of the mouth, but in your whole being, like a true smile. When we laugh, when children laugh, when we laugh without the self, selflessly, we laugh and smile with our whole body, not just with the corners of the mouth. If you feel like taking few deep breaths, let it happen. Strictly speaking, if we talk very strictly about the view of Ati Yoga, the view of Dzogchen or great perfection, there is no delusion at all, no samsara in the practice of Ati Yoga. So from that point of view, perspective of great perfection, everything is already perfect and liberated. All functioning of the mind is just flowering of the natural state. Just like in physical nature, there is grass grows and is very vibrant, full of energy. Trees grow and are vibrant. Flowers, animals, water, all elements in nature. They just bloom. They just bloom. From the point of view of great perfection, it is exactly so with our thoughts, emotions, layers of alaya vijnana, substrate consciousness. It's already perfect. But we have to be realistic. So that's the point of view from Dzogchen, from Ati Yoga. But this doesn't mean if we begin to fool ourselves and start repeating, start believing that view without it being the reality of our condition, then we are just stupid. We are making too hasty decisions. And this is why in Buddhism, vipassana or clear seeing is practiced. And as you know, my style of teaching vipassana is, we always in Pemako practice recognize Rigpa, knowing awareness, natural state first, the first mode of the two-part formula, and then compare it with whatever samsaric baggage we still have left. I always teach this in different forms. Two modes, selfless and self-based, and joining the two. And why do I teach like that? Why is Vipassana practiced in Buddhism? Is because samsaric mind, self-based mind, is a direct route, direct doorway to nirvana, liberation. So we don't, in Buddhist meditation, we don't remove thoughts. We don't try to keep them away. We don't try to remain in thoughtless state, like is the case in a lot of Hindu teachings, for example. But rather, through practicing Vipassana, comparing selfless and self-based modes, we see through the bits and pieces, through those self-me charges in the mind, in the subtle body, and then we realize that actually these thoughts, emotions are not the enemy and are not a problem at all. And this is what liberation, nirvana in Buddhism means. So this is no longer, when I'm talking about Vipassana or emptiness meditation, I'm not talking about Ati Yoga or Dzogchen anymore. This is no longer Dzogchen. This is like Mahamudra, relative teaching, not only absolute perspective, but also relative perspective. Understanding that we have a three-dimensional body and three-dimensional mind, together with zero-dimensional awareness. A lot of technical terms, but I'll try to open this up, these things during the retreat. So if you miss something now, don't worry. I'll come back to it. So you already know that, I think that all of you have awakened. Awakening in our style of practice refers to the opening of the first bhumi, seeing through the subject self. So I think that all of you have had this insight, and most of you at least have had many more insights. It has advanced this process of insight. So you already know that through that insight or insights, that the mind is not really a problem, even though previously it was the whole problem, the main problem. So in Mahamudra, one of the stages of practice, it's the third stage, is called one taste. And this one taste means that samsara and nirvana are the same. And what it means is what I just explained, that the mind, self-based mind, when we see through it, through the subject self, through the object selves in many forms, through the substrate consciousness, where the self-charge is much, much more subtle than it is in subject and object selves. We realize that our samsaric condition is actually increasingly, it's already liberated. So samsara is a direct doorway to nirvana. And also, like the different masters, Padmasambhava, many, many different great masters of the past, some in the present, fortunately also, have said, this nirvana is not a state. It is beyond all states, because it has no walls, it has no location. It has no three-dimensional space. Just recently, a Sangha member in our Facebook Sangha wrote that as she advanced to the perfection of the 6th bhumi, she has all bhumis, all 13 open. She noticed that the way how she feels her own physical body, if she closes her eyes, she cannot find it. It is there and she can move it and feel it if she starts moving the fingers and arms and the body. But if she closes her eyes, it's just this basic space, or what is called basic space. No borders. Zero-dimensional basic space that is full with vibrancy, full with life, full with smile. All the colors, all the forms. So what I just said there is what, in Mahayana Buddhism, perhaps the most important scripture or sutra is the Heart Sutra. We have sometimes chanted it on retreats, and I know that on Dharma Mind retreats you used to chant it also. But Heart Sutra is only a page-long, short sutra, but very condensed. It's really a wonderful short text, and it says famously, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So what this means is that, knowing and awareness, basic space that we now recognize, it is empty of self. There is no solid, self-existing entity or self or me in it. And when it says that form is emptiness, emptiness is form, it means that all these forms in our mind, form of a thought, form of emotion, form of substrate consciousness, any of those forms that we take place in our mind on daily basis, from one moment to the other. From the point of view of Buddha nature, all these forms are empty. In a way, these forms are the forms or expressions of awareness that doesn't have a self. So just like I said in the beginning when we started, we can look at the grass and trees and bushes and flowers. wind, flowing water, standing water. All this blooming, 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 raining, rainbows, wind, different kinds of rain, as you know, in UK and Ireland. We also have some of that in Finland, but it's usually hail and snow. So all these forms happening in nature, but where can you find yourself in a raindrop or in a blade of grass? A ridiculous question. It's the same thing with our psychology. Exactly the same. For us, yoginis and yogis, sitting posture is very important, and sitting practice is very important. It's sort of like a laboratory for us to study and analyze and understand this hypothesis that the Heart Sutra and various scriptures, what they state. But if we really understand it, if we see what I just told you, and when we see it, it doesn't really matter whether we sit or not. We might sing, we might dance, anything. When we practice in sitting posture like this, it is good for you to, sometimes sit with eyes open, sometimes with eyes closed. Sometimes you can sit completely still. Sometimes you might move a little bit, like I'm moving now, like a pendulum movement. Moving a little bit like this, yet remaining in the recognition. Or moving your fingers a little bit and toes, and then again not moving fingers or the body. I'm saying this so that we don't, so that the still sitting posture doesn't become an obstruction to our practice and a limitation to our understanding. And like in the beginning, I said that, we don't even need to relax. From the point of view of the natural state, makes no difference whatsoever if our body is relaxed or whether it's tense. But the body tends to relax in the recognition, but it's not a requirement. That's what I'm trying to say. Often long-time meditators come up with, well, first of all, when, often people who practice like concentration style paths, when they sit down, you can clearly see that there's a habit of sitting down, aligning the body in a certain way, and then starting to strive, starting to concentrate on something, doing concentration practice so that it will then have some kind of a result, like samadhi or concentration state or something like this. But in Dzogchen view, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that whatsoever. It's a different kind of samadhi in Dzogchen. And that samadhi is sahaja samadhi in Sanskrit. Sahaja means spontaneous or natural. All these states that you can access through concentration practices are lesser samadhis, as the scriptures say. Sahaja is what Buddha nature is. Spontaneous, perfect, complete, actually whether we practice or not. Also something that is a very, very common habit is that, well, first of all, when somebody points out natural state, just like I have during the last half an hour, it's easy for anyone to understand, kind of have a gut feeling that yes, that's how it is. That's a correct view. But then what happens is that when it's pointed out and it's revealed to us, we try to grasp it and hold it and sustain it. That can be a sticky habit. Trying to hold it, sustain it. But since it's not a thing, a three-dimensional thing, it cannot be held, cannot be pinned down. Nothing to grasp. But a practical pointer, what happens when we start seeking, is that it's related to our physical eyes. So I don't know if it's because of our, if it's coded in our DNA, because, we used to be hunter-gatherers, and, maybe it's encoded in our DNA or biology or whatever, in our brain somehow, that just like hunters, just like hunting animals in nature, you can see that they seek with their eyes. They look outwards. They hunt. They want to find something. So if we simply become aware of this, that we try to hunt or seek or find happiness or nirvana, just relax the eyeballs. Hunting, seeking always means concentration, always means tension of some kind. And eyes being the primary sense organs, that's where we can learn to remove this habit of seeking. Just relax the eyeballs and muscles around the eyes. A very useful trick. One thing you can also, I was mentioning about holding the body still or moving it a little bit or holding the eyes open or closed. One thing you can also test whether it affects the natural state or not is clenching your teeth and then relaxing the jaws. Do that a few times. So we can know ourselves as this well, let's say natural, true, real being, rather than the narrow-minded person that we usually are. It's kind of like knowing ourselves rather than knowing ourselves as entity that is, located in time and space, often uncomfortably contracted, rather than knowing ourselves as this open basic space that knows itself. And from this basic space, you can, like what I'm trying to point out, you can do whatever you want physically. You can squeeze your muscles, you can sing, you can dance, you can run, you can lift weights, you can fix cars, you can whatever. And this basic space is there. Because you are there. But there is also more to this basic space. It's more to this Buddha nature of ours. And it's full of energy. It's full of light. Can you perceive that? Our wakefulness as light. So it's not only transparent, clear space, but it is also bright light and lights, colors. Colors are frequencies of light. Technically, in traditional Dzogchen path, there are two different modes of practice. One is so-called cutting through, or trekche in Tibetan. I think it's samapatti in Sanskrit. And that trekche, cutting through, means that what I just said, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. But then there is also second mode in Dzogchen practice called tegal, or leaping. And that is perceiving ourselves and awareness as light and different colors. And this is the fuss, the reason why Dzogchen practitioners fuss about rainbows, pure lights. So it was a beautiful shift when I started talking about light of awareness. This is so-called tegal practice. It can be very technical, like everything can be. But this is basically tegal. Knowing ourselves as awareness and light. So what I'm talking about is that transparent awareness, that's 11th Bhumi practice. And this light of awareness is 12th and 13th Bhumi practice. Two different bodies. Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya, technically. It feels good, doesn't it? Ourselves as light. We are not visualizing light or colors, just perceiving ourselves as light. Everything as light. The physical atmosphere and the subtle atmosphere around us is filled with sentient beings. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, so they have this clear awareness, at least as potential, but they also have this light aspect. Can you perceive that? If you're not sure if you're getting what I mean with the light aspect, you can feel me with you for a moment. As if you were sitting across a coffee table. Sit with me for a moment. I am simply pointing out the reality, not the fantasy, but the reality of ourselves, of each of us. Just what I said, Buddhism says that all beings have Buddha nature. This means that everyone, each one of you hearing my voice, we have Buddha nature. And this Buddha nature is, there's no distance to it. All samsaric beings know it to some extent. Practitioners should know themselves as wakefulness, as Buddhas, more than samsaric beings. Unfortunately, that is not always the case, but should. So, I was talking about emptiness meditation, vipassana, and I was reminding that my style of teaching is always to point out the nature of mind, have recognition of ourselves as Buddhas, and then bring the, sorry my vulgar language, but bring the shit back again, bring the self back again. So from this experience that you now have, if you will, recall your usual self. Recall how you usually feel. Recall how you usually think. Simply recall your usual self. Your habits, your patterns, your reactions. You can bring back the general feel of yourself, how you usually are, or you can, if you like, you can use some specific situations, remember some specific incidents, events, even conflicts, and compare. Feel that your usual self in full from this selfless recognition. Bring it back or let it come back. And let both modes coexist. Let them coexist without any restriction whatsoever. If some form of anxiety comes up, let it come fully. Don't try to arrest or hold or define it in any way. Let it come over you. Give your whole being to it. If any form of fear comes up, complete surrender. No picking, no choosing. If some bad memory comes up that is charged, same thing. If some form of small-mindedness, pettiness comes up, same thing. This is what vipassana is. So we have to see that form is emptiness. That forms are forms of awareness. That forms are the pure expression of our Buddha nature. That our forms in the mind are like blades of grass, trees, bushes, and flowers out there in the nature. If you notice that you start squeezing subtly, you start tensing subtly, you start fixing the problem, however you perceive it, release that. Just like I told you to relax the eyes. Don't start seeking. Just relax the eyes. And let happen what happens. No arresting, no fixing problems. If you feel heat, warmth, that is good. That is Chandali, that is Tumo, which means that, awareness and the energy of awareness has a lot of intensity to it. And when that intensity, that pure intensity hits the samsaric subtle body, it generates heat. And because of this heat, because of this, I don't know the exact word in English, but like a mixing of the bodies, joining of the bodies, samsaric and nirvanic ones, one can feel very tired after a session like this, where it is pointed out strongly with power. Also, what can happen because of this pointing out and the heat, warmth, is that some bananas come up. Irritation, anxiety, fear, all that stuff again. So what do you do then? You do it all over again, of course. Don't run away. Don't fool yourself. Surrender. Stay with it. We can think and talk and dream about liberation of all sentient beings. But if we don't actually do that, if we don't actually apply our practice, what is that? And most people are like this. They have the merit, they have the karmic connections to teachers and teachings, and they receive, hopefully good teachings, but then they don't practice. They just dream and fantasize about practice. Don't realize it, don't actualize it. And that's good for nothing. That's just wasting of an excellent opportunity. But the thing is that sooner or later we will die, whether it is through coronavirus or because of some other cause. Sooner or later, each one of us will die. And at that point, the clearer one's mind is, the better. It is a pity that many people consider Dharma practice to be kind of a game or a play, but it isn't. It's really goddamn serious. In a sense, though we don't always have to take it so seriously, but you understand what I mean. Let's not waste our time. Let's not waste our opportunity. We have that potential, so let's tap it. Gradually, having glimpses of the natural state, practicing Vipassana, comparing the two modes, and through this, like this, gradually we do actualize ourselves as perfectly wakeful being. And this makes not only Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal, but all Mahasiddhas and all Buddhas of all times and places very proud of us. Because we are following in their footsteps, not fooling ourselves, not bullshitting ourselves, not bullshitting our Sangha fellows or our teachers, but actually following those footsteps, actually having those insights because of seeing our baggage and releasing our baggage. Very beautiful. Becoming blades of grass, becoming trees, becoming bushes, becoming flowers, becoming song and dance, becoming all that beautiful poetry of Buddhist masters, becoming real. And becoming an example and support for all those sentient beings. Some of them physically near to us in the same physical space. Some of them not in the physical space. But just like I was kind of a little bit kidding that, but it's not actually a joke, but when we have a recognition of the natural state, even a glimpse of it, some scriptures, some masters say that it amounts to a mountain of merit because it has so much power, it has so much effect. So even though it doesn't seem like that, when we go to the supermarket, I live right next to one, and you go to yours, we go to our workplaces, we meet our relatives. If we meet all these people as Buddhas, from the recognition, with the clarity, with the light of the real mind, they will benefit of it, even though it doesn't seem so. But there is a mixing of our subtle body and theirs. Direct effect. At this very moment, this session we're having, it's like rather than each of us practicing alone at home, like one candle alone, we have 25 candles together. And the effect in subtle realms, in non-physical realms, is immense through this simple Dharma meeting. So we are actually and directly benefiting all sentient beings, and more specifically benefiting those sentient beings, whether physical or non-physical, who we have personal karmic connection with. Whether these people have passed away or alive, or if these beings or people are from past lives. Directly benefiting all sentient beings. Beautiful. Can you perceive that? You should. Not only giving lip service to Dzogchen, Mahamudra, Vipassana, Buddhism, whatever, but actually practicing. No games. Take few deep breaths. Deeply. You can stretch your jaws and face a little bit. Stretch your arms and hands. You can tense your muscles a little bit. Same with legs. Then sit still again and curl your up.
I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. Then moving to relative bodhicitta, inhalation. May your beings be free. May your beings be free. May your beings be free. Absolute bodhicitta, inhalation. All beings are free. All beings are free. All beings are free. And dedication of merit. Inhalation. May your beings receive my accumulated merit. I dedicate the merit to the refuge and to all sentient beings. And palms together.
If you like, you can copy that bit from the chat window, the schedule for yourself. And so it's the same Zoom link that you can use for the rest of the retreat. Just click it with each session, the same link. Do you have anything to share at this point?
Yeah, Joe here, Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
In comparing the modes, you actually took the self state into the selfless state.
Yes.
What I have been doing for Vipassana has been more or less following the two-part formula, where when I identify something that is causing me pain or causing me angst, I take it in, but I identify in the body where in fact it's actually manifesting. And I take that awareness, the bright light of awareness, the warmth, beautiful light, to it and embrace it. Is that, you know, where does that relate to what we've just been doing? Is it the same?
Yes, yes. The outcome is the same. Outcome of different Vipassana applications is always the same. And the outcome is insight, seeing, you know, releasing that self-charge. But, you know, that's one way. This is what you just described is also, you know, one way to apply it. And what we did with, you know, it was a strong moment, strong session of having that, you know, really having recognition of the natural state in a way that it covers, if not all, most of everybody's mind in this session. So it was a really strong one. And so one way to practice Vipassana is instead of waiting for that stuff to come up, is to bring it on purpose, just like it is in the two-part formula, in the awakening formula. So the outcome is the same, but application is a little bit different.
Yeah, I don't know whether I was getting it fully with the two coexisting, because when I brought the self state in, I felt it was dominant. Then I felt at a later stage that in fact that the other was like an umbrella over it, you know, it was coming in, you know, like that. But I'm not certain. I haven't done it. I haven't. This is the first time that I would have actually practiced that, you know.
Yeah. I remember we had a weekend retreat in Helsinki in early March, and we did the same practice, and I remember the energy in the room, how it changed when I even mentioned that, okay, now we start bringing the self back, and people went like, fuck, no. But you know, that's the thing with Buddhist meditation, that you know, that's how it works in Buddhist practice. That's what it is. But the good side is that, as you know, we progress in our practice. If we do the practice, we progress in it, and it won't feel as heavy as it did before. You know?
Thanks, Kim. Thank you.
Yeah, Kim. Yeah, there was a fly in the room here when before at the beginning of the session, and then when we went into the natural state, the fly stopped flying around. It stopped buzzing around. It irritated me. And then when you recalled, we had to recall the the fly came back exactly in tune with switching between, and I thought that was interesting. And then it was very nice, and reminded me of the two-part formula. And then I was thinking, I'd never done this coexistence between the two before. That's the first time I've tried. I've heard you teach that or give us that instruction. So that was very interesting, and it led me to I was like Joe. I was struggling with it. It was probably going into more just tension and irritation with dominated, but it was definitely interesting, and it led me to think about the purpose of practice and the importance of integrating all parts of ourselves. Not to deny, not to suppress, to invite everything in, the good, the bad, the different, and the problems with repression in general as human beings, and like how we suffer repression. So is that what this teaching is that part of it, to help with integrating our whole selves?
Of course, always. That's what it always is, for sure. And I use the word coexisting, letting the two modes, the two energies coexist. But what happens is that Buddhism uses the word to exist, which means it's in Sanskrit it's bhava. Bhava means like a mode of existence. So Buddhism discusses existence in a very particular, in a very special way. It uses that word. And self, in other words, I translate dukkha or suffering as existential confusion, usually. Existential confusion. So existing means in Buddhism like self-based being, self-based living, samsaric living. And when I said that those two modes, two energies, letting them coexist, what happens is that this light of awareness will penetrate through this tightness, this narrow-minded self. And just letting it be, just let it do whatever it does, that self-charge, not directing it in any way, not grasping it in any way, not trying to fix it or solve it or do anything to it. And poof, it ceases to exist as a samsaric condition. So just to be clear what I meant with coexisting.
Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Hi. Can I just ask you a little bit about the structure of the retreat? I mean, when we're not sitting together, is it a good idea to try and reduce busyness, or is it okay to be relatively normal? Or what, should we just go about our lives normally, or do you think it's good to maybe do extra sittings when we're not together? Or
Yes, that was something that I meant to mention. I forgot to mention it when we started, but if you can sit more, please do. I would particularly recommend you to sit in the evening before you go to sleep, half an hour, 1 hour, whatever suits your own schedule. Also in the morning when we start kind of late, you can add another session if you want, doing the same practices that we do here, or some other, your favorite Pemako practice that you like. Sure, go ahead. Or you can just do the 2 sessions and do work or be with your family or kids or whatever you do as you normally. Whatever suits you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time to call it a night. So let's practice well for the next few days. And I will continue tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you very much for this session. It was a really, really lovely session. So see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.